meteorologist and science policy analyst with CFA, Chris Martz. We're going to debunk the April media lies on climate change. Hi, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Oh, I can hear myself coming back in the radio. Are we on speakerphone?
Yes.
Yeah, can we take that off? Any possible way?
Gotcha.
Thank you. It's like I can hear me in my ears, and it blows my mind. I'm not smart enough to hear through it. Okay. All right. So the media is stuck on stupid when it comes to climate change because they have to keep changing the term of what they're actually calling what they think we're doing to the environment because it keeps ending up not being true. So they went from global warming to climate change, and now they're calling it climate era something or another. So you know they're lying when they have to keep changing their verbiage.
Oh, yeah. They, I do caution people when they say, like, a lot of climate skeptics, for example, they'll say, like, it went from global warming to climate change. And while that's not necessarily the case with, say, scientists, that is definitely the case with how the media reports on the issue. Mm-hmm. Because you go back to the 1990s and even 2000s, and it was global warming. Yep. And then it became, they changed that to climate change. Now, in the scientific literature, it's always been climate change with global warming, but the public, the way that the media has conveyed it has changed because it was very difficult to convince people that a little bit of global warming is a big deal. But when they could tie that to, say, extreme weather events, and I use that in air quotes, then that makes it a whole lot scarier. And then, of course, they jumped on with climate crisis and climate breakdown and stuff like that, which is completely divorced from real science.
Well, and you know what? Here's the thing. When I was in school way back in the 70s when dinosaurs roamed the earth, they told us the ice age was coming, and I was scared to death because I don't like to be cold, and I lived in North Dakota, so it was already cold enough, and I was like, enough of this crap. Do I need to move to the equator, or what's going on here? Then 5 years later, there was like, oh, global warming. I was like, oh, thank God. They're all over the place.
Yeah. So in the 1960s and 70s, the Earth was cooling because of changes in ocean circulation patterns, and there was also aerosols from factories and stuff that maybe had some effect. So they had this big ice age scare. Now, a lot of the climate activist people try to say that was never a thing, but you can find dozens, hundreds of newspaper reports from Time Magazine, National Geographic, talking about the coming ice age. There were documentaries about it, and there were even some papers published in the literature about it. And one of the papers was published, I think it was in 1974, was by Dr. Stephen Schneider, who predicted that basically if we continued emitting aerosols from burning coal and all these other things, that it would reflect enough sunlight to maybe potentially trigger another glacial period. And of course, a few years later, he changed his tune and became a big climate alarmist. So on the global warming side of it, but they can't ever really keep their stories straight. It's always one environmental catastrophe to another that they pivot to.
Yeah, well, and then they can't back it up because we, like a former guest said, during COVID, there was nobody going anywhere, and literally nothing changed. So we said nothing's changed, so your hypothesis is not correct. And they're like, well, it wasn't long enough. And I'm going, what? There should have been at least the needle should have moved a little bit if that's if humans are the major cause of what you say is going to happen. But I'm telling you right now, Chris, I'm a former broadcast meteorologist, so you and we both get crapped on all the time when we're wrong about the weather. We're like economists. We're the only people who be wrong all the time, still keep our jobs. But people used to get so upset because it didn't rain when we said it was going to, because the computer models showed that 5 days out, there was a really good chance of rain. Now they're trying to tell us that those models are telling them 100 years from now what's going to happen. I'm sorry, but I'm not buying into that card game. It's just not. It's not something I'm going to believe.
No, exactly. It's funny because I'll make that argument, and I'll get climate activists, the climate activist mafia, as I call them. They come after me, and they'll say, "Well, weather models are very sophisticated, and they can predict short-term time scales. But climate is just isolating signals and all that, so they can predict that. But the fact is that both sets of models run on pretty much the same exact physics. They're just run on different time scales. So that argument doesn't really hold a whole lot of water.
No.
And they will no, and they'll show these comparisons between like modeled temperatures and measured temperatures of the global average over the last, say, 40, 50 years. And they'll show this chart where it shows that the models have done remarkably well. The problem is that these models are artificially tuned or calibrated to these observational temperature data sets. So they force the models to agree with the data, then run them, and then they conclude that the models agree with the data, therefore the models are accurate. That's not real science. So if you test the climate model projections against independent data that the models are not calibrated or forced to agree with, you don't engage in circular reasoning, the models actually show that the planet has warmed. The models show that they're warming the planet twice as fast as it actually is. The real observations show it's warming at half the rate that it should be based on theory.
Yeah, well, I had somebody tell me, you can't tell me this isn't true because the oceanic waters have come up 2 millimeters in the last 10 years. I was like, seriously? 2 millimeters? Is that when the tide is high or low? So, I mean, come on, folks. You're getting ridiculous here. And then they say, cite your facts, cite your source. I'm like, my God, look at any meteorologist who isn't connected to your climate science coalition. And they will tell you because they've been ostracized and kicked out because they refuse to buy into the climate change alarmism. They literally kick them out and call them nuts because they won't agree.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Almost every meteorologist that I know, including a lot that I graduated with, agree with me on this issue. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And these so-called climate scientists, these people who call themselves climate scientists, almost all of them today have had no formal training in atmospheric science or meteorology. They might have degrees in mathematics or physics, so they are capable of modeling things, but that doesn't make you an expert in, say, atmospheric science, which is a huge component of climate. And I think in order to understand climate dynamics, you need to understand the weather. Now, that being said, I'm not going to be one who appeals to authority and say, well, only, meteorologists can talk about climate, but, these are the same people who appeal to authority and claim that they're the experts. So you can always turn that around on them, and that makes them madder than a midget in a yo-yo contest.
Exactly, and it makes them mad because they can't take your money and charge you. I mean, can you believe that we have a carbon footprint tax where you can buy your way into using more carbon so that you can feel good about yourself while they flew?
The carbon credit system, Canada has adopted that. And I think other European countries may have done that too. And I know that billionaires and people that have private jets use it and stuff like that too. But yeah, it's this idea that you can buy yourself out of greenhouse gas emissions to it gives you a free pass to fly is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
it's crazy. I can't afford to fly, so I guess I'm off the loop of that sort of stuff. But, the monthly climate fact check is provided by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow and CFAC, the Heartland Institute, and a bunch of companies that I trust, Competitive Enterprise Institute, the Energy and Environmental Legal Institute, the International Climate Science Coalition, Truth in Energy and Climate. I mean, they put everything under a microscope and they try to hold up the global climate narrative. Now, you at CFAC are pointing out the errors in some of the work that's out there, and they get super, super mad at you.
Oh yeah. It's I have a whole dedicated fan base of haters.
Don't you love that? I get a kick out of it, and just the things, the slurs and stuff that they throw when they've never met you. They don't know anything about you. They won't look at the science that you have to show them to prove your hypothesis or your theory. And yet they really, really, really hate you because we're killing the planet.
It's a religion to them.
It is. It is. So when you're talking about this, do you go out and talk about this at all?
Yeah, I've given a few public speaking things and stuff. I'm going to do more of them over probably this year or next year. But it's just I do it on an as-needed basis.
Mm-hmm. It's needed, though, because we've got kids growing up thinking that this is absolute science. They're being taught this, that it's absolute science. I've got a grandson who can't get up to go to work but thinks he's going to have a Tesla next week. And I'm like, you're not, dude. You're not keeping a job, because he doesn't want to ruin the planet. And I'm like, you know what? Walking is a good way to not ruin the planet since you can't afford that car. But it's crazy to me how these kids truly, truly believe that humans are the problem and we're killing the planet when 7 billion people on this planet are not trying to clean their air or their water like we are. We're doing a damn good job, and we're not getting credit for it. We're being shunned by this climate change community, and really they ought to be screaming about the rest of the world, don't you think?
Yeah, I always laugh when I see Europeans, for example, try and make net zero commitments. Germany has tried doing that, and that's not going to make a dent in the CO2 emissions globally. And it's not going to make any difference when you have China and India. There was a news reporter, Kevin Killow. He works for, I think, Just the News or some other energy, maybe some other outlet. I know he used to work for Just the News. Anyway, he's an energy reporter. And he reached out to me because there was an article that he read about Boulder, Colorado, the city trying to decarbonize, I think, by 2050, I think. And so I calculated, well, if they went to net zero, say, today, how much global warming is avoided by 2100, and it was about 1/10,000th of a degree Celsius.
But they're still going to do it, right? Because, it's important.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that cracks me up. But it is true but it's because they truly believe it. And like you said, when you are religious about something, you are in hook, line, sinker. No one can convince you otherwise. It is their reason to fight. And they will fight with you no matter what you say. They don't care what you say. They won't listen to what you say. And they won't listen to common sense. But the bottom line here is there are some major players on this planet who are where America was in the 50s and 60s with coal and pollution and stuff like that. But we are at the point now where we've got clean water. We've got clean air. As long as you're not throwing your Dixie cups out the window while you're driving, and you're doing your part, we've done our part. So we can stop trying to punish ourselves now.
Yeah, the air quality has really never been better, since industrialization here than it is today in the United States. And it only continues to get better.
Yeah, and if you go to China, make sure you bring a mask because you can't breathe because of the smog. Los Angeles is still pretty smoggy, but who'd want to go there? All right, Chris, you're a meteorologist and a science policy analyst of CFACT. Where do they go to see your work, what you talk about, what you write about, all that good stuff?
Well, you can visit me on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and Facebook at Chris Martz WX. I've got a website, chrismartzweather.com. And, of course, with CFACT, you can visit us on the website, cfact.org.
Yeah, and it's MARTZ.
Correct.
And make sure you check them out because the common sense flows fast and swiftly from the minds of the meteorologists who know this is a bunch of crap. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for having me on.
Bye-bye.